qualify that ready. Make sure you guys get those.
And would you make sure that I'm on that email list, because I have never gotten anything?
Okay, yes, I most certainly will.
It also looks like maybe the page on the website has gotten a little bit behind.
Okay.
I don't know if
Behind
that,
meaning?
just the latest stuff, like if I looked at it correctly and didn't miss something, it looked like maybe this meeting wasn't, it didn't say when the next meeting was. I think it didn't have the link to the live stream or it was just, this looks like they're just a little bit behind on that, which is, that was, Kim was doing it and she's not here anymore.
Right, so we're trying to fill in the gaps.
Right. We should make sure that there's some official, I was realizing that maybe there isn't totally a way sometimes of knowing when these meetings are for the public. What's the general thing that,
Calendar.
It's on the calendar.
on the school calendar?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, I guess I do see it there.
And I guess
see it?
you were
Yeah.
going to review the next meetings, because there was an email came out that said there's one on June 7th, and said that was a change.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I was confused about that.
So,
Yeah.
Me too.
for clarity, while we're here, I mean, we are gonna have a meeting every other week. So I'll make sure the calendar gets updated and gets sent out to everybody. So if you got one that was supposed to be for June 7th, is that right? That actually should be right, but I know, Emily, you sent an email for
Yeah.
June, yeah. And for some reason, it went right into the 14th, which I'm not sure why, although maybe I was the one who did it, so. But
Well,
I'll
I
get
thought
that
one of those messages
corrected.
was from Maria, wasn't it?
It was like
I
an
mean, we got
automated
two-
thing, like,
Two messages about the same thing, but it did say change, and I kept looking, and it looked like the same time and the same date, so I was,
I think that gets automatically generated when somebody changes something on a Google Calendar. Maybe it was Maria that did it, or even if she corrected a typo or something, I think sometimes they'll do
So
that.
I'll talk to Robin tomorrow and see if I can't get teeth added and calendar cleaned up and minutes sent out. I'm sorry, I thought those went out because I sent those to her actually as soon as Emily sent them to me. So my apologies for that. I'll follow up. And I'll take care of that first thing tomorrow. All right. I didn't add it to the agenda, but just as a piece of information, everybody should have gotten this with the agenda today. I don't know that I want to spend a lot of time on it, but I did want folks to know, I mean, I did talk with Maria. I have gotten several emails from some of you guys, which is fine, about asking, gosh, what are we doing as a committee depending upon what's happening with the bids coming in for the school. So what I proposed to Maria, and she didn't seem to have an issue with it, was I felt like the committee should just continue to move forward until the board, really kind of gives us direction that says, we're not going to do anything with MET, or we're going to do this, or there's no need for the committee, because I'm just going to play it as if we're on a tight timeline and we got stuff to do. So until we hear otherwise, we've got a vote that's coming up that perhaps will help decide, maybe some of that based on what's going on with the bids. So beyond that, I don't know anything any more than that, so I'm proposing we charge for it.
Yeah, regarding this, I had one question, and maybe Tyler or Keith knows. Are any of the VE items that are being discussed affect, like, demo, or does anything affect, like, the fields or anything that touches MET in and around MET, or?
No, one of the things that we're looking at is a reduction in the scope of work on the fields, but it would be to leave what's existing. So it shouldn't impact that border where it touches the MET. Well, the back asphalt.
What about, is that connection, like, off the drop-off loop, is that going to stay now, or?
1 sec, let me find out. We just,
Oh, right, because didn't that have to change partially because of the orientation of the fields?
Yeah. At least in and around the MET,
Yep.
demo, whatever,
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Okay. All right, so no sense in dealing with the minutes since there are no minutes to deal with, but I just wanted to, I asked Robin to send you guys this since this was put together, and I'd gotten some emails with questions, and I thought more information is better than no information. So, all right, then charging forward with the agenda, if everyone's good with that. Mike, is there anything that you'd like to, I put you down for the timeline, is there something you'd like to go over with everybody based on the update for that? That would be welcome.
I have copies, they're tough to read, but you can pass them along. That's what I emailed out to everyone. Keith, are you on that email? Okay, so I need to add.
Could you add me as well?
Yeah, you weren't on there?
I didn't.
Okay,
I don't
shoot.
believe.
All right, sorry about that. I used like an old email list. I thought everything was there, but. So I didn't hear any comments back, but obviously some people didn't get the email. So one piece of information which I found out today, I wanted to confirm, I did talk to a cost estimator by the name of Bruce Stanford.
Where's he located?
I don't know where he's located, he's in Maine.
Okay.
But
that's good.
he, I think he's down towards southern Maine. He just gave me some insight regarding schedule on if he said it's gonna take him about 2 weeks if he had, 4 plans and an outline spec. So if he got 4 plans and outline spec by the end of June, first week of July, he could have it by mid-July or the end of July, his independent cost estimate.
Okay.
Which kind of matches the schedule that I have here.
Perfect.
But who is he?
He's Bruce Stanford, it's
Conesco?
Yes, exactly. Do you know where he's out of? Or?
Raymond, I think.
Okay. I think he's a one-man shop, but he said it would be about 40 hours worth of work. He charged $85 an hour, comes to around $3,500.
Did somebody recommend him to you, or you?
Yeah, he was, I worked with an architect, Jason Merriam, on Owl's Head School, and he did the cost estimating for that project.
My only concern would be that he being in southern Maine, considering what we just went through, obviously southern prices are probably a little different than pricing a project in this neck of the woods, so would be better off using somebody a little more local.
Who are you
why
gonna
would it be
find
different?
local though, like as a cost estimator?
Why would it be different, Keith?
We're farther away from everything, or
Yeah, all the work's in southern Maine.
shipping is always more expensive here. And
I
now,
mean, I don't know, we just
So you're
opened,
thinking it would
we
be
just
more?
opened bids at 26% over budget.
Yeah.
We probably want this estimate as close as we can get.
Yeah, and I actually talked to him about this bid and the one that was down east, or is it up north?
Caribou.
Caribou,
Yeah,
Up, no,
really way north.
yeah, that was like 10 million over. And he actually was somewhat involved in that, and he said there was only one bidder on that project.
Yeah.
And he said a lot of the individual items, they were right on budget, but it was the envelope and architecture. I don't know, it was, and so he was involved in another one, he said, that came in under budget. Was another bid recently that came out of another school?
Yesterday. It's Mount Ararat and Topsom.
Yeah, he said it was,
Mount Ararat and Topsom is, I think, the one that caused us the most heartburn here, because they are, that hour and 15 minutes closer to Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of the subs that bid that one didn't bid Camden. It's from what we've heard. I mean,
yeah,
it's
because
it's hard to know, but-
Yeah, so he was familiar with all that, and he understood the location, and so I talked to him a little bit about that, but anyway, just, at least it's a data point for that. If we want to go somewhere else, that's fine. Sure. I guess I don't have, I do have it mounted on a big board if everyone wants to see it. I don't know if anyone has any questions about the schedule, or if it's useful, or what everyone thinks. I don't know. Want to talk about it at all, or?
Once you added the detail, Mike, was there anything that popped out that you felt you know, based on the rough?
Yeah, I feel like we have a lot to do and a lot, and, you know, a lot of it's gonna fall to Tyler.
Yep.
In the beginning part of this, you know, I did add a couple items, like the code review, like, which we talked a little bit
Yep,
about after
started
the
that.
last meeting, and I'd like to put an elevator inspection kind of in the mix here, and I'd like to talk about how that happens, like, who do we get? Should we use the elevator people that are already maintaining this, or should we get someone else, or, more so, not the existing elevator, but is the shaft big enough? Can you fit another elevator in there, that kind of thing? Yeah, so, yeah.
In terms of the timeline, is there a concern with, it seems like with so much that needs to happen with the middle school, and I hear you, Tyler, saying that you guys are busy, and is there, I worry a little bit, I guess, about pulling you away, or is that, I mean, that's a direction of the school board sort of thing, but how much can we, if we're on this accelerated timeline of trying to figure this out, and then also having you need to do a lot of extra work for the middle school project?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Is there a concern?
You see me a lot as the face, but we're an 85-person firm. So when I get back to the office, there's a lot of other people working on all of this stuff. So I'm not concerned.
Okay.
I mean, I will be
But you would
spending-
let us know if you were.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it'd be
I
the
think that's
first,
what we need.
the
Right,
first
we
call
need
to Maria.
assurance, yeah.
Yes. So we've got other staff that is freeing up on other things, and we've actually, we've been playing phone tag with the planner, so I haven't got a zoning response tonight, but I brought floor plans that we've done a first pass on the program. So can't touch other things, we've kind of moved things around, and we try to get a jump on this, knowing that we're gonna be bouncing back and forth on the middle school, so I think we'll be in good shape.
Are there any opportunities at all for, since you guys are doing so much reworking or, looking at things again, are there any possible ways where maybe there could be a mutually beneficial thing with the MET project and the,
Such as?
well, I know, even think it would be, because before we were so concerned about, 3 parking spots, for example, is something we can't give up, or we, even though it would maybe help the MET project, we don't want to sacrifice the middle school project because we have it just the way we want it. Is there any kind of, like, for example, if you don't have to change the where am I, the drop-off loop, are there any kinds of things that would save money for the middle school project? And
Well, that is, leaving portions of this side of the site in the fields is something that we're looking at. So I think that was reflected, or some of that was reflected in the alternate price that we got for leaving the MET in place. Past that, one of the things that we're trying not to do is to trigger starting over on all of our regulatory compliance issues, like with DEP, going through
Okay.
planning board town. We're trying not to completely rework massive parts of the site that's gonna really put a wrench in the
right.
timeline, because if we delay, if we can't award a construction contract for 2 or 3 months, any savings that we're getting on a lot of these things, we're gonna burn up in winter construction. So we're trying to avoid that, but if we identify things, we certainly will put them on the list. And obviously, welcome to anything that people come up with as we discuss things.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Well,
Mr. Vito?
one other thing I did put on here is a second public outreach, and I don't know, is that what you planned on? I know they're working on survey or something.
I think ideally, I think that's.
I kind of placed it kind of prior to really putting the recommendation of the board out in final form, so that you would have a chance to hear.
Yeah.
With the public outreach, I guess I am, I've been thinking all week, like, all right, what are, like, putting these survey questions together and thinking about a press release, and it's like, you don't want to be totally tone deaf to the fact that there's been a major shakeup in the middle school project. And so to just, I definitely support the idea that we need to continue working, but at the same time, be sensitive to the fact that, you know, if we just keep saying, okay, well, I don't know, I think we need to be careful about, you know, next week might not be the best time just to say, you know, tell us what you think about repurposing MET, without it fitting into a larger kind of, I don't know, it would be nice if we could think of something that we've changed because of this, because, you know, due to the latest developments, because anything else just feels a little bit, I don't know how I could defend it exactly right now, or
I mean, defend
like
what we're doing?
yeah, just
Trying to
not
repurpose
knowing
MET?
not knowing the changes that are going to happen with the middle school project, and not knowing, you know, I'm sure there are people out there that were excited about, you know, the auditorium or the playing fields or this or that, and, you know, different things appealed to different people, and there's the overlap with people who were concerned about MET, and so not knowing yet exactly how much we're giving up on the middle school project, or even if the bids are all going to come in the way that allows the plan to move forward, or I don't know. I don't have a solution. I just think, is there anything we could do to, the cost is obviously an even bigger concern now. So are there any opportunities, like, you know, people keep asking me, can't you phase it in somehow? So is there any way that we could say, look at the possibility of just starting out with putting Zenith into MET? And so you would have no change of use. So it's continue to be a classroom thing, and it would be a phased in thing. Whereas, you know, I was at the Montessori school recently, and, you know, you look around there and it's like, wow, they've just continued to use it exactly in the same way, pretty much with no upgrades. And if we did some sort of thing where temporarily, you know, a combination of Zenith and maybe some other school could lease a part and take care of it and be, you know, we'd have no change of use, and then it would still be ready for when phase 2 would come along, and it would be time to move the superintendent's office in there. Is there any kind of?
I mean, I don't know that anything would be off the table. I kind of caution somewhat. I know you've mentioned phases in the past, and while I think there's some merit to that, my concern would be is if you're looking at going to the voters to ask them to pay for a repurposing of the building, my sense is you get one shot to do that, because I don't know that it would make sense. I can't speak for the board, but at least where I sit, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to go back to the voters a couple of times on phases where you can keep it as existing purpose as a school for now, and then come back at a later date because now we want to repurpose it for district offices, and then potentially even another phase that you have to go back to voters because now we want to do something with the basement, for example. That would be my only caution, Allison, is I don't know that that would be acceptable. I don't know that for a fact, but that would be a concern that I would have. That in phases, you got to go back to the community and ask for money to pay for that phase.
It just seems like it would be a benefit, like even if the superintendent's office never happened, which we hope it would, that there would still be a major benefit to getting Zenith into, you know, the reason that the Montessori school transfer was kind of such, or swap or whatever, lease was such a brilliant solution is because there was no change of use. And so they were able to keep it without putting a ton of money into that building. And, you know, the school district still owns it, and it would be, like, they haven't given up anything. Montessori has taken great care of the building. If the school wanted to, it doesn't make sense to at this point, but it's still there our school district wanted to use it, if that was far preferable to selling it, and, yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate the trying to think creatively and how to approach this in light of all that's going on with the middle school project. I'm wondering if, though it would be important to hear from Jeremy, the code enforcement officer, about planning issues and all of that, because that's something that you keep bringing up, is the planning. And there is something to be said for doing everything at once in terms of infrastructure. And so once you have the infrastructure done, then is it that much of a cost savings to wait down the road to move the superintendent's office over, Zenith over in phases? I don't know, but I'm just saying, I think for our purposes for this committee, I would say we just keep moving forward and maybe keep that in mind, and
Yeah, if you could just keep that in the back of your mind, and then we'll keep doing things, but
that's
make me
my
feel
idea.
better if it were.
Just throwing that out, but.
Well, we have a certain charge, and it's certainly my belief that we keep moving forward. I think, we've got a vote in June that, will probably determine whether or not we meet after June, quite possibly. So, in the meantime, I'm gonna take the thinking that things are gonna stay as they are. We're gonna make this thing happen, and we need to bring something to the voters in terms of supporting a referendum in November, asking the voters if whatever the cost would be to repurpose the building, is that an acceptable cost that they would vote for? So, again, I'm kind of with Carol. I appreciate the creative thinking. I think as much creative thinking as we can get is great. But in terms, I think, of where we are right now, we stay the course until we know a little bit more after the June vote. And I think we'll know what we need to do or not do.
And maybe if just at some point, at one of the meetings that you're going to have, the school board would just ask, is there anything else, given the new situation, that it would be helpful to the school board that the MET committee did look at? Like, if they have any added things that.
I think that would help. I think things have changed enough that it might be the time for the board to take a look at the charge that they made and see if that's still the charge they want to go forward with.
The charge for this committee?
Yes, I would hope it would, because we've done enough work and we've got timelines. That's a great timeline, Mike, by the way. So we're moving. I hear Allison's concern that, okay, we're moving, we think we've got some good things going. Now the other part where the MET project dumps in on it, that's clearly going to have an impact because it's more money. And so we're going to have to decide, we don't want that, the bids coming in at that to sink what we're trying to do here with this building. And it could very well possibly do that. I don't know, I mean, I think it's great to be thinking that maybe there's some options out there, but I do think maybe a little more direction from the board for us about whether we stay the course on this, or whether we try to look at something different, or whether they're interested, because the charge included moving the superintendent's offices, the district offices, and Zenith. Some of the rest of it, the basement area, that's creative and sort of left us to do. Is that still the charge? And I guess that might be something to hear from the board at this point. I don't know where they are on that at all.
Well, they probably haven't had time
We've been a little
to
distracted.
assess it, right?
But
Yeah.
our last regular board meeting was before all of this
Right.
happened. So we were just reporting out on our progress, and then the bids came in, and then we've had our special meetings to talk about what to do. So, yeah. But I will put that on, I'll pass it along for the agenda if that's what the group would like.
Yeah.
That's a very reasonable
Okay.
request.
One thought regarding the public outreach is whatever this committee comes up with, maybe it should check with the board before it goes out the door, so that there is some kind of mesh there. I agree with you. It does feel wrong just to put your blinders on and go charging ahead to the public. And there, clearly, there's an elephant in the room.
Right.
Yeah, I think what it says to us is we've got to be even more careful about what kind of proposal we're going to make, that it's something that's that's gonna be reasonable, that people understand, and people will say, yeah, okay, that's a good idea, and it's a good long-term idea, and it's gonna cost us some money, but it's gonna make things better in the district for a lot of people.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe an auditorium and MET.
All right, anything else on the timeline? Any other, or questions to Mike on the timeline?
Thank you for doing that. That-
Hopefully we can stick to it. I don't know if we can.
Yeah, I don't
And as we go, I can manipulate this and we'll just stay on top of it.
Well, the visual's really helpful for me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, when you look at the public outreach one, it should be done at the end of this month.
I know, and we're already there. So, well, we talked about it last one, and I guess we don't have another meeting in May, do we?
No.
No,
So,
May's almost over.
yeah, we were planning on having something for, at least talk about it this meeting, and I thought maybe we would be ready this month.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's an edit right there. It's gonna go to June, certainly.
I mean, I do have a survey that's like a very generic one. I was hoping also to have the press, I don't know where we are on the press release, I guess that's.
We have a rough draft.
It's like-
Yeah.
All right, and I guess speaking to the public outreach piece, and certainly don't want to leave the impression that I'm saying let's go forward, and, you know, it's as if we're in a vacuum. Clearly, you know, what happens with the June vote is going to really determine. I think in terms of public outreach, we will be behind in that in terms of where the timeline is, because I don't think it would be appropriate to do anything before the vote. It doesn't make any sense to me. So unless anybody else feels differently, or that I'm sideways on something, so on that piece, yeah, I think we have to kind of hang tight. So moving forward on the next piece, I sent around some framework on the basement, got some great feedback, so thank you. I made some of those adjustments based on that feedback to the document that's being handed out now. I meant to actually email that to everybody even as late as today, but unfortunately the day just kind of got away from me, so I apologize for that.
Thank you.
Hopefully I've got enough for everybody. If not, we'll share with you. All right, so in terms of the tenant characteristics, I got some feedback on some of that. I think, Mike, actually from you was some good points. So I made some of those changes. On the undesirable characteristics, there was some question about the business hours in the evening and weekends. I purposely kind of did a sub-point that just said, you know, I think Mike, you mentioned like, you know, work shifts or something. So I wanted to keep that a little bit broad, so that perhaps maybe that's a discussion point as a lease could be negotiated. But I have spoken to some of my neighbors along Knowlton, specifically to the opportunities that the basement could be. Interestingly enough, that was within the first 2 or 3 questions of, well, is there going to be activity outside of the regular workday? And I said, well, I don't know that at this point. So I think there is some desire to try to maintain as much of a neighborhood feel as possible. So I don't know if that is a level of comfort in terms of what I put, but
I would
that's
just,
where I started.
you know, remind everyone that there are often evening activities at the school.
Right.
So that's not a new situation for the neighborhood. And so are they, or are you as a neighbor thinking that you wouldn't want to see that continue, or
No, I
or
don't
that
think
just?
that's a concern at all.
Okay,
I think,
you're just thinking.
You know, listen, I can be incredibly flexible, and I think everybody else is too, understanding that there, you know, there are games and dances and things going
Yeah.
on here. enough to know that there's evening stuff. I think the question was, is there going to be a business here that's going to require people going in and out throughout the night, every single night, and into the weekends, which quite frankly was kind of where my head was as well. So that was it. I didn't have anybody say, I would hate to see that happen. It was really more of just a question.
Yeah.
So nobody really made a statement of, I certainly hope this is not what happens. It was, well, what's gonna go on? What kind of business is gonna go in there? Well, I don't know that we know at this point.
Well,
So-
I'm kind of curious as to what kind of business would go in there that would be on shift work, that would be, and I'd like an example of something that somebody would think would be
Be a call
appropriate
center,
for.
a call center.
Yeah.
A call center would have
you
shift
could have a
work
small
all night
Okay.
long, 24 hours.
Small manufacturing type of business that had shift work, depending upon what it was. I mean, I think it's certainly possible,
Yeah.
so.
Be an architecture firm.
You guys are
Oh,
really.
you have shift work?
Definitely.
That's what I was trying to think of too. Like, I often work late into the night, but that's not exactly what you're trying to get at.
No.
I think we should be careful to not give that impression that, just working at night, if you're going to lease that space, that working in the evening is going to be,
Completely get it.
because the
And I don't-
chances, honestly, of a small manufacturing company coming to Camden, I mean, we've been trying, we like brainstorm about how we can get those jobs back, and it's like everybody's basically agreed that we have to give up a tiny bit for the time being, so.
But then there's that zoning
it's
issue,
so-
and so that's how
Right.
we cover ourselves also, by saying it has to fit the zoning.
And we got noise ordinances in Camden and all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff to protect
I wonder
people, but.
if it should say business hours requiring regular evening work and weekends.
Because even fitness
Say that
classes
again.
are,
I wonder if it should say business hours requiring regular evening work, like, in other words.
Something they do all the time, yeah.
Maybe that's not the right way to say it, but that's what I meant. Exactly.
but maybe even distinguish evening and like all night long sort of stuff, because you think about, here it says in the desired tenant characteristics are health and fitness, so there are all kinds of evening yoga classes, and I just don't,
Dance classes
right, I
across
just don't
the
want to,
street.
the other thing too is that with the proposal for the new middle school, it was promised to the townspeople quite a bit that the building would be even, the actual school would be able to be used even more as a community building, because there are going to be these
Yep.
new spaces, and the way it was designed also so that some of it, you could, right now, we can't really lock things and keep people out of different
Yeah.
spaces, and so, there might, that was sort of part of the proposal, that there may be more things going on here that are not school.
But I think that's kind of covered in the use of the premises, like in those paragraphs. Like you have to meet municipal and zoning ordinances, laws, all of those kinds of things.
Okay. Well, listen, I'm happy to wordsmith that even more than it is. I'm not married to what there. I wanted to keep it broad for purposes of the discussion that we're having now, so.
The shipping goods on large trucks, I was trying to think about that too, and what that, the majority of things that would be shipped would be on, in any sort of thing, would be on similar sized trucks, like FedEx trucks or UPS trucks, or is there something specific that you're trying to get at there?
Tractor trailers arrive every day.
Yeah.
So maybe okay,
Yeah,
There'll be
big,
some
big
coming to the
shipping.
school though, right?
right,
There'll be some coming to the school.
food delivery trucks and things like that, so.
All right. So again, I don't know that I'm married to anything there, so certainly open to any other feedback.
And then the no manufacturing or assembly work, what if that were just like somebody, sewing purses or something, or what?
Well, I think, if it's something that would be conducive to what the rest of the building is being used for, again, I think that's, think we tried to kind of cover that a little bit as a part of that bullet point.
There's this guy in the Lincoln Street Center, for instance, repairing old sewing machines. And I don't think he makes a lot of noise, but people take their sewing machines now, and then he does leather stitch work stuff, and
I think you frame them as framework. It doesn't mean that it's hard and fast. You look at whatever situation somebody presents, and well, you want to have some guidelines. You can say, yeah, well, we hadn't thought of somebody doing sewing machines, so maybe that would fit within our framework. So if you keep the framework reasonably broad and then make the decision as to what you get or who you get.
Right, and along with the minimum of a 5-year lease, you know, a large space, like there are lots of other qualifications that a tenant would have to meet. Bob, I have a question. Are you foreseeing that we use some combination of this in an advertisement to be soliciting?
I think that's
tenants?
a reasonable
Okay.
expectation, sure.
Yeah. So we need to,
Or at least send it out as information if somebody asks for the information.
yeah.
I have a section of the survey right now for people that said if they say they are interested in possibly leasing, it's like they would, you know, there'd be a link within the question, you know, here are some of the guidelines, read this first and then answer the questions. I just want to make sure that when people read this in general, they don't say, oh, they were just so close, they were going to say no to everything. And so that when people read it, they get the impression that it's an open-minded sort of thing, rather than have the first reaction be, you know, I can't believe they said no to this.
That's funny,
So-
because my thought is that there would be more of a reaction on the other side of people saying, oh, I'm a little afraid by this because I'm not quite sure what can go in here. I think there might be more of a concern about
That
it's
broad.
too broad, you know.
Yeah, there'll be people on both
Yeah,
sides.
well, there will be, but I
Right.
just.
I mean, we just kind of do our best and,
Right.
and be, you know, if you're not sure, then contact Bob.
The last,
Right.
And Bob will say, I'm not sure, because we don't know.
The last bullet here says additional uses may be reviewed
Yeah.
at time of lease.
Right, yeah.
So it kind of leaves it
Yeah.
open door.
Yeah, I don't.
But I
they're
wonder how, when you present it to the
amenable.
public, how they feel about that. Like, who's gonna make the decision that that's an acceptable use?
Well, the school board ultimately will, which I think
Okay.
should
Our
give
committee
people a
will
lot of.
first.
Yeah, and then present it to the
And then the
board.
school board, yeah.
should it say
Maybe we
additionally?
should we put that on there, like, uses would be reviewed by school board?
To me, that's what gives me, like, having kids, knowing that my kids are gonna be here. When I know that ultimately it's gonna be the school board that's gonna decide, that relieves any fear for me that anything bad
Yeah,
or
so
things.
that could be an additional bullet,
Yeah.
sure. That makes perfect sense. I think we know that as an assumption, but it's
Yeah,
good to
well,
have
Right.
it, it's good to have it written down.
Okay.
It's not gonna be the town decide, it's not gonna be some, you know,
Right.
the code enforcement officer deciding, it'll be, there's an extra level of protection.
Okay, I'll, can add a little bit of language to that, but I think to Wax's point, which really was, you know, I did want it to be a lot like it's just a framework. You know, it's not, it's to kind of give folks at least some sense of here's kind of what the thinking is behind it. And then, yeah, the board and the district can dial it in as tight or keep it as loose as they feel like it makes sense based on who's interested.
Basically, the board's gonna do it. We may end up going with a proposal that doesn't have anybody solidly in the basement yet. I mean, that's, certainly could happen. In which case, I'm presuming this is not a committee for life, so we're not gonna be doing approvals in December.
August, I
January.
think.
We're almost certain of that because you can't enter into the lease until like 2022. So-
Okay,
Yeah.
well, then we won't really have
So
to
you
say
won't
it.
have, I mean, if someone hangs on that long because they want to lease that space, the next.
That's a
good
good
point.
point.
Yeah. And maybe that should be on there, that
Yeah.
lease is not available until 2022.
Although, you know
Right?
what,
I mean,
maybe
it's
if
a
somebody
Well,
wanted
it's
to
a
start a
good
basement.
disclosure,
Yeah.
because if people get excited about
Is
it,
there
and they're
room
like,
in the
well,
basement
yeah, it's nice, but it's going
What'd
to be
you
down
say?
the road.
Hey, you know
I was
what?
just
I'm
thinking,
not
maybe if
sure
somebody
we
wanted
can
to lease the basement right now to help raise some money, maybe there'd be certain things like.
Right
He's
now.
quite right.
No, like, we're not leasing.
No, I don't
You're
think we
vehemently
are.
opposed to that.
Yeah.
happening right now.
I don't think we're quite ready.
No, you don't want another ball to juggle, right?
No,
I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to do a whole lot of this at this point, I guess, as we talk about it. If 2022 is the getting in point, and I'm a person who has a business or an idea, I'm not gonna commit to anything now. One, I wanna see what you do to it, to fix
Right.
it. And two, I wanna see, so I'll know whether it fits my needs or not as a business person or whatever. So, I mean, we can do this and include part of this in the proposal, but I'd be amazed if somebody's gonna come through the door and say, yes, I'd like a 5-year lease beginning in 2022. Oh, yeah, it's 2018 now.
Well, I think,
That doesn't make any sense.
I think in terms of
Yeah, that's-
where we are, at least my head with this was, part of what the board asked us to do was, come up with some of this. So being able to put together a proposal that
And I
has
think that's good.
criteria framework. We talked about it, I think even Allison asked in the last, how much longer are we gonna talk about the basement? Which is,
Even
a
Allison.
fair question, quite honestly. So I think this is really it, maybe a little bit more wordsmithing, but, in terms of what our charge is, I think we're kind of done with this.
I agree.
at
Yeah,
this
I
point.
think we've.
agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, appreciate the input. I'll make some tweaks to it, send it out to everybody. If there's anything else, we'll follow up with that. But to a certain degree, I think we can kind of check this box.
So Bob, will you have those changes before our next board meeting? Because what I'd like to do is send this electronically to the board in the board packet, so everyone has a chance to look
Yeah.
at, this Mike's timeline, our basement criteria, and whatever,
Sure.
any other documents
Sure,
we have
what's
created.
what's kind of the drop dead date that you use? 'Cause I'm in crazy work mode right now. So I'm
Yeah,
trying to get
our
it to you.
next, we've moved meetings around.
20th.
No, I think
I think it's the 11th. I think we're having our board meeting on the
June 11th.
11th.
I mean, I can certainly have it to you well before that. I mean, I'll try to get it to you, Carol, by next week.
Oh, that'll be fine. Yeah.
Okay, no problem.
Thanks.
All right. Any other questions about that? Please say no. All right.
Leadership in action.
Bob, I was just wondering if,
Yes, ma'am.
just putting the zoning, what the current zoning is right now on this sheet, because I think that defines what goes in there on some level.
Well, that's a
Or no.
little bit kind of, until you have your
Yeah,
conversation.
you're currently in a V, which is the very restricted, that's village, and I've been playing phone tag with the town planner. Because I think the idea was that we'd try to get something more closely aligned with the transitional river, which is a lot more appropriate for trying to lease to an outside entity. The village really only is for municipal and quasi-municipal functions in this,
Residential,
yes.
which we already kind of know we don't want, so.
Right.
So I think that's a fair question, but maybe when we've got a little bit more information specific to zoning, maybe it does make sense to add that to it so that people do understand that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Also potentially really confusing, or maybe to say that,
Zoning
like
change.
some,
Current zoning is.
some uses may require, may be subject to zoning changes, or,
But I think the idea is, especially with your 2020 occupancy, that we'll have that stuff in place before you go out to solicit these people.
is it 2020 or 2022?
Well, the earliest that you're gonna start renovations is
I guess the occupancy is
2020.
actually 2021. It's the
Okay.
21-22 school year, but it's the,
Right.
so it could be the late summer of 21, actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you're gonna take, if it stays, you'll take ownership of the building late summer of 2020.
Ownership.
Well, as of now, once we sign into an agreement with the contractor, you won't own this building anymore.
So after this school year, of the 1920 school
It's
year.
a construction
Sorry.
term. It's a
Yeah.
construction term. It's like raising, don't get
Got
it.
hooked on the semantics. It's the construction term.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, moving along then. Wax, Carol, you guys want to talk about the press release at all? I mean, granted, it's kind of on hold.
We met, did some very general conversation.
Okay.
Wax typed up a rough draft. I made some changes, and that's where we're at.
We shipped that to you and to Maria?
Yeah, we sent it out,
Or did you? I didn't get it.
yeah.
You did the changes, so.
I forwarded it, Google Docs.
Huh, I didn't.
Oh boy, we're having all kinds of,
Minutes.
Right.
what'd you say?
It's with the
Oh, it's with, maybe it's with the minutes, somewhere out there in, let's see if
I was kind of relieved not to be getting the rough draft of the press release, because I was like, oh, okay, well,
you
the
know,
survey's not quite done,
I
and,
have it right here.
You have it right there,
Sure do,
okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay. I'll take a look at
Yeah, so review it, I mean, it's pretty general and just kind of
It's pretty general and very
hits on
short.
what we're
It's not
doing.
just a document, the idea was to get something out that people could know what we're doing and where it
Right.
was. So it hits 4 or 5 things, it doesn't go on, it doesn't go into great detail.
Mhm.
So it says, here's what we're looking at, lists the people that are on the committee, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was not, it was intended just to give an update to the community on what we've been doing, what we're looking at, where we think we're going.
Okay. I'll
But we
take a
should,
look.
my thinking was that once Maria and you looked at it, Bob, that maybe it would come back to this committee before it
Right,
goes out.
to take a look at
I
it.
certainly want to have everybody have an
In
opportunity.
case
to
somebody
take a
looked
look
at it and said, whoa, you guys can't say that.
I mean, I have it, I can read it aloud if you want, or,
Sure.
I'd like to hear it.
okay,
Yeah, sure.
all right. Press release, MSAD number 28, MET Repurposing Committee, May 25th, 2018. Wow, did you see that?
Well done.
That was a little science experiment.
See you do it again.
See me do it again, yeah. The MET Repurposing Committee was formed by the MSAD number 28 Board of Directors in March 2018 and charged with developing a concept for repurposing the MET building to include uses primarily for MSAD 28 and the 5-town CSD. The intent is to have a plan ready for consideration by the voters in November 2018. The members of the committee are Bob Lawson, Chair, Peter Orn, Carol Gartley, Marcia Dietrich, Allison McKellar, Matt Stone, Helen Scipione, thank you, Mike Sabatini, Carmen Bombeck, Mike Weatherwax, and Keith Rose.
Oh, I'm not on
You're not on there.
And unless you misread, Carol, I think you said Matt Stone.
yeah.
Oh,
I
Matt
was-
Stone, Matt,
It's a more interesting last name.
yeah.
When
Good, see,
Jamie's
this
got
is
it.
why we
You
needed,
merged the leadership.
that's why we need, oh, yeah, Jamie and Matt. I didn't even catch that, you wrote that, and I didn't even catch it, wow.
I copied, I think I pasted something. Someone said that, so,
So this is why we have a committee.
Committee's getting a little squirrely already.
All right, a little punchy. The committee has met 4 times since March, and initial planning calls for moving the 5-town CSD and MSAD 28 administrative offices, the 5-town CSD Zenith program, parentheses alternative education, and daytime adult education into the 1st and 2nd floors of the building. There is support from the 5-town CSD board for this planning. In addition, options for the use of the basement are being explored, with strong consideration being given to leasing this space to a suitable client. The intent would be to generate revenue to help pay for costs for maintaining the building. The development of the criteria for finding 1 or more suitable clients is currently being developed and is likely to include a focus on uses compatible with the other uses of the building. These might include, but are not limited to, utilization that is educational, child-oriented, or general office in nature. A public outreach survey is currently being developed to gather public input about potential uses of the basement space. The committee meets every other Thursday at 5 p.m. in the CRMS cafeteria, with next meeting dates being May 24th and June 7th. The meetings are open to the public to attend. Additional information about the work of the committee, including live stream video of the meetings, can be found at, and there's a link to the website.
Nice.
Did we leave anything out, or should we,
Sounds great.
besides fixing the names?
That's
I think that's what
I
we're doing.
I don't think
You think
if,
that's what we're doing?
if Maria and Bob are good with that, I don't think it needs to come back again to us, right? That was just
Yes,
to the purpose of just getting it out there.
right.
What about a
Seems
just quick little blurb about freeing up the bus barn?
This is not.
It's not about
committee
the
has
bus
nothing to do
barn,
with the bus barn.
Well, the purpose of moving the, like, because that's where Zenith and the superintendent's office are now. Isn't that not, is there another plan for the bus barn?
Our
that's-
charge is not, that doesn't have anything to do with the bus barn.
Yeah.
I think that's, we're getting into territory that is not the responsibility of this committee.
Oh, I'm not trying to be pushy here. I think some people don't even know that the superintendent's office and the Zenith program are in the bus barn, so.
So are you saying
I
like,
thought
moving from the bus barn in order to free up space for?
Even if you don't put the in order.
Well, I was gonna say, we're not even mentioning that Zenith and the superintendent's offices are going in, so I don't know why you
We
would want
did.
to get into.
Yeah,
Oh, you
it's
did?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
it's
sorry.
in there.
No, it's okay.
Even if you just
Oh, I
say
missed that.
from
And
the bus
adult,
barn.
and adult,
Right.
daytime
Okay.
adult ed, yeah, those. three.
Okay, so then that's kind of been decided.
Well, that's,
Yeah, it's
that's
okay.
our
In the charter.
charge.
Okay.
Yeah, that's our
All right,
charter.
okay.
So, let me go back.
I mean, if you wanted to say, and please don't misunderstand me, if we want to say that it's moving from the bus barn to the MET building, if that's what you're saying, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I do too.
From
When
their
you said
current
it-
location in the
Yeah,
bus
the
barn.
counter to that would be, well, why don't you just leave it in the bus barn and tear this down?
Well,
That's right.
it can
There
become
is
a
that out
slippery
there.
slope, which would be my concern as well.
Is there consensus? Because I thought I had understood that, the goal of the CSD board or the combination of the boards was, like, the master plan was to get Zenith and superintendent out of the bus barn so that could be a bus barn.
Mhm.
Is there any reason we would want to not say that? Because I think.
No, we can say that. I just heard Bob saying, we don't want to go down the path of discussing what's happening in the bus barn, because that's not really our charge or our purview. Our purview is the MET building, but
And
it's certainly
If the
fine.
district decides to do something else with the bus barn after everybody's moved into METs, that's the district's responsibility. I'm not
think some
trying to
people are gonna
create a
wanna know
bigger
that.
deal than it needs to be.
But that's not our
It's not our
role, though.
responsibility.
That would be a question for the superintendent's office. What is gonna happen?
Well, can we
Or to the
ask-
school board.
Can I ask, or, obviously I can ask, but if because I know there are people that ask me that, and maybe it's very hard to know how many people in the community care about one thing or another just based on, but it seems like I would prefer not to answer could be anything. If they really are considering many different uses, then we should just leave it alone. But if there's consensus about, yeah, that would be the goal, is to make it back to the bus barn, then I think there's no reason not to just
I think the
communicate.
board has to say that, not
Yeah,
us.
not us.
And they haven't said that.
I think they've talked about adding bays in the bus barn, is my understanding, but I don't know.
Right.
Again, that needs to come from them, not us, because we don't make that decision.
I just thought that was well established. I feel
Well,
like I've
that's-
been
I
told.
think it may be.
It
Emerson.
is,
Okay.
It may
yeah,
be.
but there could be other
But again.
things that they're looking at, like storage or.
It was like
I
two
don't
more
know, there was
bays.
something else that was tossed out there. So I think for this committee to get involved with
Okay.
what the board is talking about, what's happening in the bus barn is,
Yeah, 'cause this
again,
needs
out
to
of
be
our realm.
addressed, I think, somewhere down the road.
But certainly putting a little note in there saying, they're moving from the bus barn, I think that's,
I agree.
makes perfect sense, yeah.
That's a
I
good
don't
idea.
think that's an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to add something?
Just going to propose that that's what we do.
Concur. So,
Okay,
All right.
I've put that, you want me to make those changes? Larry?
absolutely.
Okay, all right.
All right.
Sorry.
Anything else? Otherwise, I think it's right to the point.
Yeah, we just wanted it to be straightforward, encompass everything we're doing and
Nice job, you guys.
keeping
That was
everyone
very
in.
The view is to keep it short enough that people would read it. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yeah.
things get out,
Yes.
and I read the first two paragraphs and say, whoa, okay, that's all I need to know. But if you keep it short and people can read through it, then.
Agree. Okay.
I have one other question about the press release. When do you want me to just send it out with these changes?
Send it out where? To us or to the media?
To the
Paper.
the
We're
Yeah.
an arm of the board and the superintendent need to send it out.
okay,
I'm pretty clear
that's my
about that.
question,
I
okay.
think it doesn't
So I'll
come
forward
with-
it to
committee
the
doesn't do it.
superintendent.
It goes to the board. This is a press release. We'd ask go out under the auspices of one of the other. It doesn't need to be both of them, but either the board or the superintendent.
Yep,
But weren't we gonna wait to do that until,
Yeah, I think
It's
that's.
not the great-
The thing is, after the June vote, I
Right.
think it makes sense to communicate that, because that may be a great press release that really will be completely meaningless in a couple of weeks, possibly.
I think that's a
Hopefully
good idea,
not.
and you'll just need to adjust the number of meetings. we
That's what I
have
was
and the
just
dates and
writing.
Stuff, right?
just the number of
Dates.
meetings.
think
I don't want it
that's-
to be like Maria's facts about the, on Penn Bay Pilot, like, story number 1 is Maria explaining
Yeah, I think-
moving forward with middle school, and then story number 2 is update from the MET Repurposing Committee. I just,
It comes out later.
Yep,
I would agree with that. All right,
yep.
cool,
you.
thank you for that. Survey says,
yep, so the idea, and Carmen and I went back and forth a little bit, but haven't done that much together yet. So this is, I think we both had very busy weeks, but I started the idea was just to kind of keep it very broad, so that I wrote a little introduction, and my intent was to basically just copy and paste whatever the press release was, so that if, the idea would be that the survey would be attached to the press release, but if people come upon the survey without having read the press release, that it sort of has a little bit of that information in it. So the MET, the little introduction I had written was, the MET Repurposing Committee was formed by the MSAD 28 School Board to explore and present a plan for the continued use of the MET building following the completion of the new middle school. Please take a moment to read this summary of the committee's work, link to press release, and then use this form to submit your comments and questions. The form has 2 purposes. 1, to provide a flexible option for general public input relating to the committee's work. 2, to provide a way to express interest in leasing some or all of the space available on the ground level / basement floor of MET in the event that voters approve a plan to repurpose rather than demolish the building. For information regarding the committee's work, link to the blah, 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 link to that. Then the idea was to ask for people, I think that we should ask that people that want to submit comments use their name and say where they're from, say the town that they live in, because the idea, I think it's sort of an official public comment. If people just want to banter back and forth about stuff, they can go on one of the news sites, but the idea is whenever you submit comments, like for the public record, you have to use your name and you have to say who you are. So if everybody agrees with that, then.
I do, I agree.
So I then asked for town residents. I said comments are welcome from people who reside both in and out of the district, but because the plan must ultimately be approved and likely financed by taxpayers in Camden and Rockport, it is important for the committee to be able to distinguish those responses from others.
absolutely.
So, and then I didn't know if we should also, it was like Camden, Rockport, and then other, and then people can say that where that is. Should we be sensitive to the fact that technically Hope, Appleton, and Lincolnville, because like they are taxpayers of the CSD, and the CSD is gonna be, like those students that are gonna possibly be in the Zenith program, and they're paying taxes, and they pay taxes for the superintendent, so I don't know, I don't wanna glaze over that, or.
It's a lease situation.
I think that's a fair question.
Yeah, that's a good
but
question.
Ultimately, I mean, certainly having input, I think anybody should feel comfortable doing that. Ultimately, it comes down to Camden and Rockport taxpayers, and that's really
Vote
the
on it.
bottom line.
They're gonna vote on it, but
Because they don't
And pay
fund-
for it.
They don't fund it directly, they're contract with the SAD.
But do we want to, I mean, do
I
we
just
want to
put-
know if it's, I guess people in the general comments can say, I'm from Lincolnville and I've always, my son was in this program and we always felt like it needed a better thing, and we can take that into consideration. I just didn't want people to read it and think it was insensitive to that larger issue, but I also didn't want to muddy it with like, well, technically Kim Rockport's going to finance it, but we know that the other three are involved a little bit too, so.
Well, I hear that. I would say just leave it blank for them right in a town they're from, and
Yeah.
right in
Okay.
Caribou if they want to.
I was trying to make it so that the form would populate correctly and it would be, rather than it, it's having, so that we could actually look at the data but maybe I'll just leave it blank, let people write in their town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't
A
like,
spot for
it's not
them
Cameron
to-
Rockport other, it's just, and then we'll
Cameron Rockport
fix the
town.
data so that it
Yep.
can categorize. Okay,
From a financial, just a question on that financial point of view, I mean, the CSD leases space from the SAD, but they would be in this new arrangement, if it were to happen, would be paying the amount of the value that would be covered by Zenith or Adult Ed only. So this is about the basement, which taxpayers not from Camden and Rockport won't actually be paying technically. They're contributing to the MET building, but not this portion of the MET building. So
I was thinking the
I'm not
survey was,
saying it that to disagree with anything, almost just for my own clarity around like the financing kind of deal that happens between the two, right? So I think it's fine to just do that, but that would be the case, wouldn't it? Then
It would,
they
yeah.
would be
It's a
paying
good
for the
point.
square footage that you guys would use at Zenith. right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think it's fine. It's gonna run that way.
yeah.
so then there'd be, the next questions, are you here taking the survey because, are you here to express interest in leasing space in the MET building? And then the description under there, I'll probably ultimately just copy and paste the little description from yours. But in order to offset any cost of repurposing the building for the Zenith program and district offices, the school board is exploring options for leasing the unneeded portion of the building on the ground level, approximately 6,000 to 7,000 square feet. Is that?
It's less than that.
Yeah.
16. Hold on, I think I have this.
Yeah, like 63.
On this sheet, it says 2,500 to 3,800.
Total?
On the lease
No,
price.
that's half.
Okay.
One
yes.
side,
Like
One side's
6,300.
38 and the other side is 28.
yeah.
And I think there is
Oh, so-
So
likely
76.
some district storage that will end up down there, so it's
Approximately
Probably not.
7,000.
Okay. And depending on, so people can answer yes or no, and that'll take them to, if you answer yes, it takes you to a series of other questions.
Did you use the word unneeded?
Yeah, but I'm not, there's no.
I don't want to
no-
wordsmith it, but that.
No, I
that
do want to
struck me as a
wordsmith it because I
little-
just want to make it, I'll just copy it. I think there'll be a relevant section of your press release that will say, this is what the school board is, this is why we're considering
Yeah.
leasing, and I'll just copy and paste that as the description.
Yeah, maybe unused or
Yeah.
unneeded.
Spoken for.
Yeah.
Because the other,
Yeah, anyway, we could.
Right, yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, that kind of jumped out at me.
They'll
and I wanna
definitely
make
be,
sure that-
I'm gonna send this out as
Okay.
everybody can, practice taking it, pretend
Okay.
to be a
Sounds
Lincolnville
good.
resident and see how you feel. So then just the general portion of it, whoops, hold on, is this? I have my preview open from earlier that, I think if you say no, you're just here to make you just want to have comments, you're not interested in leasing. I just kind of wanted to leave that as broad as possible, rather than lead people down, are you concerned about finances? Are you concerned about this? Are you on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to save the building? I don't want to go
No,
down any
that's-
of that. So, the idea that I had was just that we would leave that very broad, like, in the space provided below, feel free to share your questions, ideas. Please share comments, concerns, ideas, and questions in the space provided below. And people could do it multiple times if they wanted to. If they saw an agenda item.
So what are
Yes.
we hoping to
I don't-
get out of that?
Well, that's the thing, I don't,
Like, how is that going to inform our work? Because that's what we want this survey, that's the whole point of the survey,
right.
if I'm not mistaken.
So
is
I
to
was thinking-
inform our decision-making or set up-
Things, we wouldn't necessarily want to limit comments from coming in at another time throughout the process. So we would have a push to try and get feedback when we send it out, but if somebody, a week later sees an agenda item at some point and wants to comment again, I don't know.
What's the purpose of the purpose of the survey, I thought, was to give anyone a chance just to throw out ideas of things they'd like to see in the basement of MET.
Right.
Oh, I thought it was, and also, the basement, yes, but also, I think we need to get public input on the committee's work in general, too. So if people want to comment on, I think you need to
People
keep the
can
costs down. I think people should be allowed to say that, not just about what they think should go in the basement. But I think you should really consider, not allowing parking somewhere. I don't know. It's like things about, or I think you should really consider replacing the windows or something, because I was in there and windows, we wouldn't want to, I wasn't thinking we were just limiting this to everybody's ideas about the basement. There might be.
Well, I think the intent was certainly part of it to be somewhat informational and to tie into the press release, I think was, at least that was kind of part of my thinking as well. But I think a big driver though was to, reach out to the community specifically because there was going to be available space, and would there be interest and ideas in terms of how to utilize that space?
Mm-hmm.
That was my takeaway in terms of utilizing a survey that would be a real easy way to go about doing it.
Yeah, I guess one of my thinking is you come back to the charter, and the charter, the board has made a determination that they want to move the district offices and the Zenith program. So asking people for outreach and comments about that decision that's been made at the board level, we're not going to be able to do anything with that information if we get it, because we're not changing the board's charge. If they want to do that, they need to be calling their local board member, sorry, Carol. But
And I'm the only one
For
here.
comments on the
Survey,
process,
call
yeah.
Carol Dartling.
Thanks, Mike.
But the basement area is something that where,
Yeah,
you could get some good ideas and some creative ideas. And so that's, I guess I like the focus being there. Now, I'm fine with having anything on the survey that says, yeah, anything else you want to tell us. And that's fine. They can tell us whatever they want. We'll do with it.
And they will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And we'll do with it as we see fit to what the feedback is and what it fits with what we're trying to do.
Right.
But I would also say that if people have questions about agenda items, I'm not sure if a
Right,
survey
yeah.
is the right place to be having those questions, and that's where they need to talk to Bob.
So should we, right.
Well, you put me
Spreading
out
the
there,
love.
so spreading love.
Right, maybe I could add that somewhere too,
Yeah.
throughout the process if you. What about, I also said, ask people to, if they are a resident of Knowlton Street, maybe to mention that. Maybe I could have, in the general part, there could be two sections. Do you have specific ideas about, or proposals about the basement, and then, any other comments about the process? Like if somebody says, I do this for a living and I want to volunteer my time to, evaluate an elevator, then we might want them to say that. I think
that's the
our
intent of the
our
survey.
committee
It's too
though,
broad then, Allison. I
they
think-
can, we don't encourage them to say that, but we don't restrict them, because anybody can come to our meetings
Sure.
and make a public comment about anything really. And, whether or not that factors into not everything is gonna change our minds or change our direction, but to make sure that people have an opportunity just to,
I think having something blank says, what else you want to tell
Right.
us or something, that's great.
no, I won't suggest that people
No. I
offer
have
to do
one
that.
other question about it. I'm wondering if maybe when you first started talking about the availability of the basement space, that you should have a line in there that says, that space would become available no sooner than summer of 2021. Because you don't want somebody
Right.
Yeah,
packing their
point.
bags and saying, I'm gonna take it now, when can I get in there?
yeah.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So in the lease inquiry section, said what type of use are you proposing for the space? How many square feet do you need? Have you read the lease guidelines?
And again, in
Link
that lease
here.
guidelines, it's going to say that as well.
Right.
We're gonna add that, so, but yeah.
So, I mean, it's just very,
Yeah, maybe it's, actually, I think Wax raises a good point. I think you've got something in there that talks about, there is gonna be this available opportunity in the basement, or something about the basement being available, and maybe that's a great place to put the date,
Yeah,
it will be
just-
available in 2021.
That's a piece of information people need if they're gonna
Yeah.
come in.
should we put that in the press release somewhere, just a little, so that, because,
We did not, because we didn't,
We
when we
didn't.
were working on it, I don't think I'd seen this yet, or if I had, I hadn't looked closely at it, so.
No, I'll look to
Yeah,
see
it
if
might
it
be- that
fits
might be-
somewhere.
But we could
Not a
put
bad
something in
idea.
there, it's a good idea to put
Yeah.
it there, in both places. like
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
that's a, I sort of lose sight of that a little bit, how far off it is that
I
we're.
did too, so that's why visuals are so good.
Somebody, I'm just imagining somebody like waiting for 3 years to start their whole plan, like.
Well, listen, I don't remember, maybe it was actually even Mike, the last meeting, as we were kind of diving into this, a little more into the weeds than we have now, as a reminder of who knows, what could change or what will happen, 3 years from now, or however long.
Right.
So-
Well, when it was talked, when whoever, I can't remember who talked to the Y and who talked to, you talked to the Camden Historical
Right.
Oh,
Society. I mean, was that brought up about when it would be available? I mean, like the Y with the teen
Specifically
center.
to the Y, I don't know, I wasn't
Okay.
in the conversation. My sense is maybe it was, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah, I didn't emphasize that too much with Heather. Although the things with the Historical Society, things that take fundraising, they're sometimes kind of happy to have a long time to plan, because you can
Right, but
fundraise. and-
if the
or
Y
the
one
teen
teen
center
center
might want to make plans.
within the next year to move,
Yep.
then they would be
Yeah, yeah.
off the boards as far as this goes.
Right.
Okay. Anything else, Allison, on the survey?
So I'll just incorporate that, Carol, if you could send me the draft that
Yep.
you have, so that I could take some of that wording, and then I'll send the link out to everybody. Does that work? And
Yep.
everybody can sort of like take it
Yep.
maybe, and
Yeah.
you can answer the questions, and we make sure it works okay.
Sounds good.
And I'll do that within
Is
the
it a
next
Survey
week.
Monkey, or is it
So that would
a
be,
different
I guess,
survey
another,
program?
I just used Google Forms,
Mhm.
and it's on my account. It's one of those things you can add, other people, if anybody else is interested in. I think it would make sense to have more than just me as the, owner of it. If there's a specific account, I should share it with, to be a joint
Would it come
owner.
through the district?
Yeah, I would think that
I would think it
the
would.
account that owns that should be a fivetowns.net
Yeah.
account, so you could certainly copy it, share it. We make our own copy that would exist within,
And-
I don't know if board members have those accounts or who that would be under,
I don't know.
or
I think I can make you an
MET
owner of
repurposing
it.
at
and-
fivetowns.net, and then there's a
Yeah.
new email address for it, but I definitely think it should, I would have thought it should
I
be
agree.
Yeah,
within the digital domain of the school,
Yeah.
not any one
Right.
of us
yeah,
individually.
I agree, yeah.
Yep.
And
that's
then
easy
the
enough
rest
to
of,
do.
if somebody is taking, I could be an editor.
Administrator on it or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. That way if my kids accidentally get a hold of it, they don't really, whoops, it's deleted. Sorry, I know, you can usually fix that with Google, but,
Good job.
yep,
So
okay,
they can
thank
start.
you.
Yeah, I
Yep,
think that's
good start.
And I was maybe you'll see, I put a couple pictures in there and stuff to add interest, but can
Pictures are
definitely veto power over the, I'll change anything that anybody wants.
I'm sure it's great.
Great, thank you
Yeah.
for that. All right. So in lieu of talking about zoning, Tyler's gonna share some floor plan stuff, so Mike's getting super excited now.
So we've kind of floated
These
these,
out too? Oh, yeah.
that's for the next.
Okay.
You're welcome. Yes.
Right.
We've started to float these through with Maria and Keith's kind of first passes, and they're pretty rough at this point. So these are some hand sketches of the space planning based on what we were given from a study that was done, I think, a year or two ago, converting parts of the bus barn into an enhancement for the superintendent's office and the Zenith and Adult Ed program. So the way,
I'm sorry, just to orient, is this Knowlton Street?
yes, Knowlton Street is on the bottom of both of these pages. So when we started out, I think originally, the plan was that Zenith and Adult Ed would be on the second floor. As we dove into this a little bit more, it started to make a little bit more sense based on the utilities that were in place for them to be on the first floor. So on the left-hand side, we've got a new small entryway adjacent to the parking lot. That would be the accessible entrance to the building. You would come in, there'd be a stair on your left, elevator on the right, and then a small set of stairs that would take you up that half flight to that main first floor. In here, we were able to utilize nearly all of the partitions that are in there now. There are some dashed lines in there that represent some existing walls, mostly small closets that we would take out to make proper sized classrooms for those programs. And the big thing on this floor that we were able to mostly reutilize, have to play with some of the mounting heights a little bit, were those two group bathrooms. So those are some pretty expensive items that not having to recreate on an upper floor is going to save significant amounts of money. So that was one of the big draws on keeping them on that floor. And it seemed to fit pretty well. We were able to get the 3 full-size rooms. There's an option for either a small group or dedicated office space. And then across the hall, there's a large adult ed classroom and a small adult ed classroom. So there's a little opportunity for multiple uses on that floor, which is great. And there also is toward the front, we located a shared conference space, so a small conference room that can be either utilized for the Zenith or shared programs with adult ed, or overflow for the superintendent's and central administrative offices on the second floor.
Last question.
Absolutely, please.
As I look at it on the very top left and the top right, is that stairwell, or what's that?
Those would be new egress stairs. On this one, on any of the options, we're going to need to remove the fire escape on the south side of the building.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
And
So
then-
say that again. What you just said. Sorry. So in the middle, you know where the stairs currently are in the middle of
Yep,
the
both of
hallway,
those stay.
they'd still be there, and there's just an extra set of stairs at the end as well,
Correct.
basically. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
And this option shows relocating the elevator. We've done some code review that we can maybe save one or the other, but I don't think both.
One or the other.
Existing stair
Oh.
or existing elevator. There's a lot of space limitations on that side, so we're going to be kind of removing sections of this floor where it's wood framed. It takes some of the complexity out. I mean, it's not easy, but it's something that's easily or is attainable to do. Keeps everything within the footprint and provides a good secure entrance. We were able to put a door at the top of the stairs so that you can lock off the Zenith wing if you wanted to. Even though it's a specialty program, I think having some of those lockdown procedures in some fashion, we'd have to talk about
Yes,
how those
definitely. Yes.
function is important.
Yeah.
So we tried to keep all of that in mind as we did that.
And Tyler, just a quick question for clarity. The stair over on the right side, that's new, none of that existing
Correct.
is there, that it goes away.
Yep.
Everybody's gone.
And a lot of that, we really tried to make the building function based on what we have remaining for that existing parking lot. A lot of overflow parking is still gonna be over near that bus barn. We're gonna need to kind of count on both of those lots, I think, by the time that we get Zenith Adult Ed, the central office, and then some amount of parking for whatever ends up in the basement. I think we're gonna be tight overall, so we wanted to try to make things as accessible from that side as we can.
Okay.
Tyler, one of the things we have now is a small kitchen.
Okay.
And I was just wondering where that would fit into this plan.
Well, we could possibly work something like that into that small group room, or maybe that kind of overflow conference room just becomes the kitchen.
Because that's pretty functional to us.
We plan on that.
Yeah.
Is that, do you use a full range?
We just had,
I mean,
I'm not gonna say.
it's an important
I
question
believe
because
you.
it's
Yes.
expensive.
but
is
it's important to
Yep.
us as well. We currently just have a regular range with a hood.
Yeah.
But there'd have to be fire suppression and all of
Yes,
that.
but that is really, really important to us.
It is, so it's part of your programming.
Yes, it
to
is.
Work on those
Okay,
kinds
I'll-
of skills.
I have a couple offline questions about your stove use that we can
Okay,
talk about
we can
afterwards.
talk about later, but that's very integral
Oh,
to
it's,
what we
it
do.
just
I
was
know you're
funny.
laughing
Just-
about it.
It's definitely
it's-
important. There is a kitchen in the basement of MET right now.
Right here.
So overall, I mean, we were able to repurpose and reutilize a fairly significant part of that floor, which I think will go
That's really
a long way
good.
to keep those costs
Saving
down.
costs.
So, any questions about first floor?
So is that, sorry if I missed this at the beginning, is this different than what was originally with that $3.2 million number, or was this, like, does this make you think, oh, we might be better, or was this what was already planned?
I think originally we had planned to do this on the upper floor, so we would have been rebuilding bathrooms and other things, and I think we probably have a little bit of savings, so.
Can I ask a question, maybe premature, the HVAC system, like, do you have, I don't see any chases, or are these chases next to the
Yep, sorry,
stairwells?
I didn't mention that.
Yep.
Those are currently on the south side, on the left-hand side of the two center stairs. There's
The big
two
Xs.
rectangles with X's. There's 3 different options that we have, that we can talk about next, about mechanical systems.
Okay.
We'll need to go up and down through the building somewhere with supply ducts, pipes, other stuff. So we've kind of carved out 2 spaces on either side in existing kind of poorly constructed closets. So we've got that ability to go up and down, which is going to be important.
So where's the elevator?
The elevator's on the south side.
That X,
That X?
X, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
That's what I thought.
I didn't label it, sorry.
No, that's okay. I assumed that's what it was, and you started
Yep.
talking about the chases, and I just didn't know where they were, but I got it.
Tyler Mike's.
Oh, sorry.
Did I hear you say, Tyler, that you looked at either the shaft, the elevator, or the stair, and you could keep one or the other?
That's,
Like you could have this bump out of the egress stair and utilize it and gain back where.
possibly, I think in order to keep either one, you're going to be reconstructing parts of either the top landings of each 3 of the floors, or taking the stair out, moving that wall over to reconstruct the landing in front of the elevator. I did check the code. We aren't allowed to have them open up directly into the stair shaft. It's actually a 1-sentence thing that you shall not do this, so that one was kind of a,
Even on a fully I tried to look,
yeah.
even on a fully sprinkled building? Because I
Yes,
thought that
it
was,
says, elevator shall not be in common shaft enclosure with a stair, period. There are no exceptions or anything else. It's just, shall not do that. And there's another section as well that also says.
The elevators have to be in an enclosure, but it can't be in the stair enclosure.
Correct, separate enclosures.
The elevator can be out in the open somewhere.
It can,
that's why I see the elevators opening the hallway of the hotels.
yes.
That's
And
okay.
you're
And
all,
then the
there
stairs
probably
are
are
in that.
other
Fire
functions in there,
protected.
smoke control, that you probably may not see as readily, but it can't be in the stair enclosure. So that's where we have kind of that, we're missing like 2 feet is what it
Yeah.
really comes down to.
What if, I mean, as a possibility, you have these mechanical shafts, if you could utilize some of the elevator shaft as mechanical shaft, and then use the stair.
Yeah, it's potential. Some of that will be on what we decide to do on the systems.
Yeah.
We had kind of envisioned using that penthouse space that's really going to be inaccessible, and if that was the case, those 2 shafts that I have shown are kind of like in a perfect spot. But certainly, there are other options. We may mean rooftop units, more ductwork across roofs, which we can do.
I like that it's centrally located though, to feed the directions, but that's,
Yeah, so some of
it's
that,
premature.
yeah, and we may come up with a great option to keep one of those elements on the end. I think it does give some circulation challenges, because if you're trying to maintain security and the lockdown ability for the educational wing, you don't want to have to encourage people to traverse that on a regular basis to get up to the third floor, or the second floor, excuse me. So I think pros and cons to the different options. Okay, we'll take a look at the second floor. So second floor, the darker lines are new walls. What you'll see is, what I tried to do is I worked basically on a module of one classroom. So if you look down, starting on the bottom left, where that facilities office over to that lighter line just on the other side of reception and facilities, that's one classroom. So what I did was I created kind of a pod where you can get an office, a couple open workspaces, and then those can repeat as you go by. Those fit actually very nicely within existing classroom spaces. There are a few areas where we'll have to open up a little bit larger section of the corridors to get, a little bit open space for reception, so that's a little bit welcoming, and then some punched openings into kind of as the entry in those work areas. So you come in, access private offices off kind of a shared corridor between the different open workspaces. So that pod fit kind of nicely with the existing classroom layout up there. So again, trying to minimize how many interior partitions that we're gutting. We're still going to be looking, because of the amount of work we need to do with our some of the systems, that we're probably still looking at either exposed ductwork or new ceilings or other things like that. But trying to find ways to keep as much of that interior existing footprint as we can. Again, I try to dash in some of the existing lines that were existing walls. Just to give you an idea, we're really not doing a huge amount of wholesale demolition up there.
Great. It's encouraging.
One question, and
Yeah.
we touched base about this after we walked through after the last meeting. We talked about shortening the dead-end hallway so that you wouldn't need a second egress stair all the way to the second floor.
It became more challenging. I think in order to do that, we probably would be looking at doing a lot more demolition. So I'm not sure if it offset. We can certainly take a look at that. It is possible to maybe have an open office on one end, but I think you'd have to take out most of the corridors, ceilings, floors, would have to be patched. So I think it'd be a lot more invasive. So I elected to go at least for the first pass with this double loaded corridor with the stairs.
You're talking about running offices across the hallway
Well,
there?
take
Yeah.
the hallway space
Shorten it
back,
down.
and you shorten that dead-end hallway for code reasons, and it would require, basically, one of those existing center stairs could be an egress stair.
I got you.
But I think
I don't know about anybody else, but it just drives me crazy that there's 2 sets of stairs in this building, 3 sets,
I know.
and we're building 2 new ones. It's like, it's driving me crazy, but
yeah.
Yes.
just,
It was something that when you had, exposed fire escapes on ends were less of a concern back when it was built, so. But I understand, it takes up real estate. So, but I was pleasantly surprised, everything seemed to kind of just fit.
I have a question about the bathrooms on this second floor.
Yep.
Is there a reason that they don't align over the first floor? Does it matter?
I'm not sure it matters, we can,
Maximizing plumbing opportunities and
I
venting?
think there are
or-
hard ceilings in the bathrooms in here now, so we probably not want to open them up if we didn't have to, but, this is our first pass, so
Yeah.
we haven't sat down with all of the end users yet. We've gone off of the information that we've given, so it's kind of an advanced copy. So, yeah, certainly.
Now, at what point does it make sense to get some sort of cost estimating really early on in this, just to have sort of the types of questions that Carol is asking, to say, Mike had that one possibility, Nickerson and O'Day had offered to do stuff for free, and so
Certainly.
it kind of seems like if we can take advantage of that, it might not be the full thing that we do, but if there's a way to take advantage of any of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we're still going to be doing cost estimating within our office
Right.
as we make design decisions. So certainly, I would give it a little bit of time. You can see it's a hand sketch.
Right,
So
yeah.
let us get a little bit of wind in our sails here, and then,
So let me know when you think, or us
Yep.
know when you think that if
I
that
think
could
it's
be
a great
helpful.
start. The idea of putting Zenith up there on the first floor and
Yeah.
saving the walls, so you don't have to do that demo, and that's gotta be cost saving.
So really the
Yeah.
bathrooms that get you on these types of things.
It's always the
Really?
bathrooms.
Yeah, bathrooms
Oh, well,
are expensive. Every time you,
Expensive.
just the
Yeah.
plumbing and fixtures, like $3,500 a fixture to change, it adds up fast. So it's,
And in terms of code, that's all you need for,
well, the nice
That
thing about
second
that
floor.
is that they would still have access to the open bathrooms on the
First floor.
first floor.
yeah.
And then we'll have to take a look at, as we get a little bit further on the basement, we'll likely have to get something down there as well, especially if you're renting it out to an outside group, that we wouldn't want to encourage them to be accessing either superintendent or student bathrooms.
Where does this kind of fit within this, what we're looking at now, fit, I guess, within either like our flow as a committee or your guys' flow from Oak Point point of view? I'm just curious.
Well, I think
It's good to look at it, I'm just curious where
Yeah.
it fits with the
I think-
overall objective.
Mike had us with building
In June.
programming now and then floor plans in June. So we knew we had kind of some time and opening in the office. We
This-
took advantage of it.
So
I
this is
think-
the floor plans, is like the floor plans and
And programming.
elevations?
I think,
Is that what it's called? Is it that topic it's under?
sorry.
No,
Yeah.
it's more in the full building programming, just into floor plans.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
So
think
he's kind of.
we're trying
he's
to
a little
pick up
early.
a week or two.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
just,
so we're-
just curious.
Well, it always takes a little bit longer than we anticipate to get the floor plans set, so
Okay.
trying to get a jump on it as we
Yeah.
have
Thank you.
time.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
So what are next steps for those of us who don't do this as frequently as you guys do, obviously?
For
Where do you go from here?
For the next step, for us will be to sit down with Zenith and the central office, whoever their representative is, to kind of go through this, again, to just do our fact check, you know, oh, we're missing a kitchen. That's, you know, that's
yeah.
it's a big component, check that off the list. So that way we can kind of go through, we haven't forgotten a desk, we haven't, you know, it's easy to misplace a person at this level. So I think we'd probably spend the next couple weeks kind of going through that, get this flushed out. And then give us the time to kind of start diving into our full code analysis. We'll do our egress calculations, see if there's anything weird that pops up in that review to hit the fire marshal with, and then kind of just keep going. I think we've got elevations of the building drawn already from the middle school project, so if appropriate, we'll start those. We're not doing a big wholesale change to any of the facades, so, you know, we'll probably end up generating a color rendering at the end anyways. We're gonna need something for some marketing, publicity stuff for you. So that'll be kind of I was pretty pleased, unless we've forgotten something big, like a classroom or, you know, something
Do you
along
see-
that line.
No, I don't see anything like that.
So I think we'll continue our work, keep you updated, and then once we get a little bit further on this, that's when we're gonna start putting, you know, our basis of design together. We've got the mechanical stuff pretty well underway. So kind of rough ballpark estimates for decision-making.
Okay.
And then, yeah, that end of June, I think, is when we're shooting for having a packet to send out to someone to look at. And I think probably at the next meeting, we'll want to talk a little bit more about other systems and things that may come into play on how far do we want to take to meet the energy code? Are we looking at new windows? Are we insulating the building perimeters, stuff that we may want to identify to get some cost options for, some different ways of approaching those things. So there'll be kind of a few big picture things. The rest of it is pretty, in this building, pretty straightforward.
Okay, Allison.
When would we know, or how, or will we know, with regards to the demolition of this building? I know, of course, there'll be contractors and subcontractors that will probably want, some of the material will be of value to them, but there might be things like, I'm thinking the kitchen, for example, or elements from this building, the kitchen's the only example I can think of right now, but that might be, you know, we might know whether that makes a difference to the demolition person, like, oh no, they want that because that's part of the contract and they're gonna sell this or that,
Yeah,
or
that's already happened.
it has.
Yeah, so Keith and the district went through the building and they generated a salvage list. So they have, I don't know, 20 or 30 items that they felt were of enough value to keep.
Okay,
And then we've identified that it was issued as part of the specifications. I think Keith actually had a yard sale here recently.
Mhm.
and
Yes.
Sold a couple things, so they sold a garage door, sold, stuff that will eventually come down. So that kind of stuff has already happened, and then the rest of it, when I said before that once we sign a contract, you won't kind of own this building, is that the materials and things that make up it will belong to the demolition contractor, and then he'll see fit to dispose of as they can. I mean, there's,
but do they sometimes decide that things aren't, like, are there instances where you can say, well, what about the kitchen, for example? Are they taking the whole kitchen?
I think that anything of value, we're relocating, I think, 2 pieces of equipment to the new school, stuff that was
Okay.
recently purchased. And then there's stuff that doesn't meet code. I mean, if there's stuff that becomes an interest to someone, we can certainly talk to them.
Okay.
If you tell me in the next couple of weeks, we can do it.
But are you suggesting using it in the MAT?
I'm not suggesting anything, yeah, I guess I am, just wondering if there's an opportunity there, or if
I
if
don't know.
we're missing an opportunity, or if we should.
I would say that most of the stuff in there probably isn't something that you're gonna wanna repurpose, stuff that, if it doesn't meet the current kitchen codes and guards and other, I'm not an expert on this stuff, so Keith might be able to tell you better, that it would be hard to repurpose in a new or a renovated facility. But certainly, I mean, if there's something that you see that you think we wanna save that isn't on our list, we can
What
certainly
about
talk
like all of these booths and things like that? Do those get,
Furniture is not included in our demolition, so anything that is a kind of a loose component is not something that they bid on.
okay,
They would, like windows, doors, fixed objects is the stuff that they have in their demolition contract. So the district will own, or have the responsibility of getting all of the old furniture out. Anything that's not
Okay.
repurposed, they likely have another garage sale or something at the end.
okay,
Most of the furnishings, though, are going to the new
Yeah.
facility.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. And I think there was an alternate, I don't know if anyone had seen all of the bid results, but the alternate for the retaining of the MET was a credit of $70,000.
Yep.
And now, how is that possible?
That's it?
That, I mean, to turn it into playing fields and everything?
Yep.
So they'll take down MET and turn it into a playing field for $70,000?
That's what the bid was. The next bid was $58,000
I
in
saw
savings.
that. And everybody that I've talked to about that said, something must
It's
seem a
just
little bit off, because you guys
the-
obviously budgeted more.
The entire
Or-
demolition of the entire facility was under $500,000, just to put it in perspective.
So that's the only part that came in under what you expected.
No, I don't think the only part.
Oh, well,
So-
that's it, that's the first, that's.
There's also the.
I didn't mean to say it like
we
that, I
have
meant like-
We have hazardous materials that would come out regardless, so that's also in, we had
Mm.
$750 total for demolition of hazardous materials. So it was pretty close to what we estimated, but when you're talking $450,000 for the entire building for the whole length of Knowlton, it's not a lot of value in saving that one piece. I'm guessing that building comes down very quickly, and it's mostly inert waste that I think the town of Camden's, or the waste management.
No
place-
way, we're not taking MET when it's.
Well, but I
I'm
think
just kidding. Yeah,
one of
you're
the
right,
things
it's
that-
because it doesn't, I'm just kidding,
One of
it
the
doesn't
things
have
that they-
rebar all through it.
Exactly, they actually looked at that as something that they could use to shim
I
parts of
know.
the facility when they were closing it, so they were thinking, fantastic. So.
Yeah, I'm on
you
the
reduce
Midcoast Solid Waste Board too, so we keep talking about.
Yeah, so anyway, those are some of the things that help keep that demolition cost down. If they can dispose of it relatively cheaply, then you don't pay for it through the bid.
Right. We are redesigning the transfer station right now, and a big thing is to try to get all of our tractor trailer, to get it into a grade differential. So, and that's a huge cost difference in redesigning, and so we're trying to think if we can coordinate in the right way and get a
Yeah.
bunch of material for free, it could make something possible for us over there that wouldn't otherwise be.
Yeah, they've been very good over there. They've kept in kind of constant contact with us.
Jim's really interested.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
is fantastic. I mean, it's something that instead of buying fill for it later, if we can, from wherever part of the building, utilize it for good use like that,
The clay too, if the, and soils that get removed.
Okay.
You have one?
couple more things, if you don't, guys don't mind, sorry to press it on time here, but, on the code, are you gonna have something like summary of
Yes.
the code and how you navigate all that and
Yep.
what's required, okay?
Yeah, we won't, we'll do kind of that cursory code analysis, redetermining building type, checking our allowable areas, just double checking the stairs for the existing building code.
Right.
Just making sure that there are no red flags that come up.
And I guess this is more of a question to everyone in the committee, like, how do we make the decision on whether the stair or the elevator stays, or, I mean, that's clearly, it should be a cost savings if the stair stays and you don't have to make a new stair inside of a building. How do you guys feel about how we discuss that, or should Tyler generate multiple options so we can look at them, or?
I think we need to understand what's feasible, what's not. If it's not feasible, why?
Yep.
And I think we need to understand the costs associated with it. I mean, in theory, that might be great to keep it, but by the time you take everything out and keep the enclosure intact and then rebuild inside.
Why not use the existing stairs? I mean, instead of rebuilding them. That's what I'm thinking.
But if that wall, sometimes there might be complications when you take
Yeah,
down one part and you have to rebuild another part, or.
I think that stair was added much later. Let me see if I need to check to see if that's one of the sets we have existing drawings for. Some of it would be whether or not we can rebuild that top landing easily. I think that's kind of
That was the issue. There's some landing.
yeah, it's like
Accessibility.
everything needed 2 more feet.
Yeah.
If it was 2 more feet wider, you would have no
If the elevator
problem.
goes away, then, I mean.
Yeah, it all depends on what that floor structure is holding it up, and I don't know that off the top of my head.
I mean, to answer your question about how we do that, it seems like it's important for us, because it does seem like as a committee, we come up against, like someone mentions elevator, and then suddenly it opens up this big conversation, or stairwell leads, or windows, whatever it might be. So do we need to generate a list of like questions of what are I mean, I don't have those questions because technically I don't understand it well enough to do that. So do those that have those questions need to generate those and pass them to Tyler as a first point? I'm not sure how much work that creates for you and all those things, but it does seem like having a pretty methodical look through these things, because sometimes when we just float them out there, we kind of have a conversation and then it just gets unresolved, and then it's floated out next time and it's still unresolved, whereas I kind of feel like we need to put some of these things to bed.
Yeah.
So that, because just from a committee point of view, it feels a little bit frustrating to me that we're not plowing through the work if we just keep talking around the issues and don't come to a declarative finishing point.
Agreed.
And I think that the public, it's an obvious question to the public, well, why are you building new stairs when you have stairs?
Right.
Well, I would say that's something for you guys to understand the structural pieces, the two of you to look at and say, look, here's 2 options. This one's gonna cost this much, this one's gonna cost this much, but it's gonna be this much better or worse or whatever. Then tell us, because I mean, I'm here you talking and I know a little bit about where the stuff is and what you're talking about, but I'm not clear on it. So if you're able to come up with, yeah, here's 2 things, here's one option to do it this way, another option to do it this way, here's the pluses and minuses of each option, include cost as one of those pluses and minuses, then I'm
Then
ready
we
to
can make a
vote.
decision and as you
And then as a
said,
committee,
put it
we
to bed. I
we
love
make
it.
a
Yeah,
decision,
let's
and
make
then
a
we have to
decision and
just
move
go
on.
with the consensus. And
Yeah.
if we agree we're
Right.
getting rid of the stairwell and the elevator, that's what the committee says, and
Yeah.
then like we just move on with our work.
Yeah.
Right.
And then we have information that we can explain to community members that might
right,
ask
exactly.
questions.
When you
Right?
say
We
we
say,
looked
look,
at
we looked at it,
Yeah.
we investigated it,
Yeah.
we, came to a decision and moved on.
I mean, the elevator and the stairs have come up several times, and I think to Matt's point, rather than continue to kick that can, does it make sense maybe for Mike, you and Tyler, a little bit along the lines of a wax
Yeah, Carmen's the
And Carmen.
to connect, and that becomes an agenda item, and we flesh it out once and for all and move on, because, I just don't have that, that's not my wheelhouse, so I don't understand it. You can explain it to
Yeah,
me
we
and
can
I'll understand.
set up a go-to meeting or something that we can,
And you're gonna need that before you go very
Much
much
further
further
down
with
the road.
this. aren't you?
yeah, I mean, yes.
I think at the beginning Carmen had written that email, I really liked the way she phrased some things of, make a list of things that are, agreed by everybody. If there's not a point of contention about, okay, we know we need X, Y, or Z, then those go in the, this category, the heating and ventilation, or, and then there's a category of some sticking points that, we can deal with, that a subcommittee or
I
whatever.
just wondered if maybe proposing some, I'm just kind of jotting down what I think some agenda items could be for the next meeting. Does this stairway and elevator piece, can you guys, and maybe even Carmen as a part of the discussion as well, can you guys kind of flesh that out before the next meeting so we can dive into that in a big way? And maybe some of the systems stuff gets tied into that, or is that too much for one meeting, do you think?
Well, I think they're different things as well.
Okay, and that's fine.
I think systems are more, like, we're gonna have systems in here regardless, and it's just gonna be picking which one we want, so. Space limitations and things on those are pretty consistent, it's just how we're doing it. So I think if we can tackle the stairs by the next 2 weeks, I think that's probably
Great.
Okay. Is that,
That's great, that's great, I think that's a good idea, I just didn't know, that's great. One more request, Tyler.
Yeah, please.
What's missing from my brain here is, and it's partly why I'm drawn to this side of the building.
Yeah.
And in your head, you've already, because of what you've done for the whole middle school, you've separated them. And I wonder if we could have a site plan
Oh, certainly, yes.
associated with this, so that I understand the parking, and yeah, this is the front door of this building now instead of over here. Or it would help me
Absolutely.
get my
Sure.
head wrapped around that. And and as I think, in one way, at least from MET's perspective, it's not good that middle school's budget's way over, but if that connection, that vehicle connection over to the bus barn stays, I think that's a good idea. I mean, I think it's a good outcome for shared parking.
Yeah, if we don't reconfigure fields, there's a potential for us to leave that.
So that's.
So I think that's, I just looked when I checked earlier, it wasn't on our VE plan, so I'm gonna check that when I get back and talk to Steve. If we reconfigure the fields, they don't fit, with proper orientation, so I guess it'll be a little bit dependent on how the VE shakes
and
out.
the site plans can be schematic like this. I mean, just
Oh,
to
yeah,
get
yeah,
some of the bigger
Yep.
pictures, what happened.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
I'm happy to.
all right. So for the next meeting, elevator and stairs, so you guys will be able to connect before then, and
Yeah.
and we can dive into that.
Yeah, we'll find a time, hopefully maybe next week,
Yeah.
where we can loop in Carmen as well. I know she was interested in that discussion.
Okay, so if the three of you could, if that could be really kind of the driver for the next meeting, and then maybe if there's opportunity that you've had to speak with Jeremy, and we can have a.
Yeah, I just caught him on the couple days he's been out of town, so.
Okay.
It's
So
my
maybe
bad.
it's the zoning, a quick, follow-up on the zoning piece.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
then
that-
we deep dive into stairs and elevators.
Do you have time for all this?
Yeah.
You're gonna.
If I don't,
Okay.
someone in the office will have time for it.
So one last question. The elevators, is that something that you understand well enough, or should we get someone else up here to look at it and say, yeah, this shaft's big enough, we can put this cab in here?
We do this elevator work all the time,
Okay,
so
so-
it's something that we're comfortable with, but I'm sure if we called like Travis from Pine State Elevator that he'd come out. He does your maintenance now,
Oh, okay.
so I'm sure he'd take a peek at it when he's in the area.
Because I have it
I think
as a
if-
line item for like us as a committee to understand and do independently of you, but that's what I'm asking everyone, is that the way to go here?
Well,
I mean-
I think, Keith could probably add more information, but he's been dealing with this elevator and has some good information, and I'm sure he works with Travis all the time.
I
on
think
the
he should be
inspections
part of
and-
that conversation
Yeah.
when you
I
guys have
think
it too,
Keith
it's
will-
crucial.
should just handle that if you're gonna do it. Just assign that.
I mean,
He's not
I'd
here.
If
love
we
He can
really
volunteer.
want to put the elevator issue to bed, I know it is annoying to some people, but it's brought up lots in other conversations that I have. If we truly want to put it to bed, then we have to, not the whole committee, but we do have to go a little bit above and beyond repeating what has already been done. So getting a little bit of an independent evaluation, as unnecessary as it may seem to some people when there are,
Oh, it's.
Or just the evaluation that's already out there.
It's more, all that they're gonna do is see if the physical dimensions of the shaft will
The
take a
cab
new
fits,
elevator.
Yeah, and what,
Because
we have mechanicals.
We know that the existing elevator is shot. I don't think that's
Right.
a discussion point. It's just, can the shaft physically be reutilized? And if
And where
that's the
would you
case,
locate the machine room? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think you would leave it where it is. It'd be kind of like a little bump on the back of the building. We'd have to figure out how to make it weather tight. It's not really designed for that now. It shares interior walls, but I think that's really the question is,
Yeah.
if we keep the elevator, then it's likely the stairs go. If you keep the stairs, then maybe the elevator goes. I don't think you can keep both.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand if is there a cost savings there?
Well, that's
Or
what
how
I
much of a
need to
cost
take a
savings?
look at
That's
the
what we
structural.
Mostly need to
Yeah.
I
know.
think that's the goal of that group
Correct.
that meet, is to hash out some of those things, to bring it back to the lay folks around the table and say, here's the simplest version, so we can just help think through that
Yeah.
without
I think-
technical chat.
I think if we convince Carmen and Mike about the right answer, that people are gonna,
I just like to know all the data. like
Yeah,
you said,
absolutely.
Yeah.
and,
I think that's good.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, I'll reach out to Keith and ask him about connecting with Travis, it sounds like, and getting some type of follow-up in terms of inspection.
Yeah, I'd love to be at that. If Travis comes up here, I'd love to join him. So I'm happy to reach out to
Must
Keith.
come out every other
Just
month.
copy me on email. or
I'll
I'll
do that in email. All right, so the agenda for the next meeting, elevators and stairs, and a follow-up on zoning, and I think that's probably gonna be a rather full plate, it sounds like.
what was that? I'm sorry?
For the next meeting, agenda, elevators and stairs, and then a follow-up on zoning.
Yep.
Sounds like that's,
And then we'll update you on however we make out space planning wise.
okay.
Why did we receive an email from Maria? Is she to be a part of this next meeting? Because I was kind of confused about, we've been getting our
I'm not
I
sure.
think she just
notifications from.
edited the calendar.
I think it was an editing.
Yeah,
It
we get
wasn't-
those random ones for the middle school building committee as
Yeah,
well.
I
I
think,
don't
you
know how
know,
this.
Robin's trying to dig in and
Yeah.
figure, and I think.
Okay, I didn't know if
sometimes
Maria was on the agenda for next time.
No.
Not
Okay,
that I'm
all
aware of.
right.
Not that I'm aware of.
No, I think she's probably helping Rob.
Right. There are probably multiple
Everybody
editors of
has
that
to-
calendar.
Yeah.
All right,
I did.
thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I did too.
Thanks, Bob.
So I'm in that building, so I
Oh, we
got
did
to
systems.
call and ask her.
Did we want to,
I'm missing
Bob?
out on something
Bob,
here.
there actually is something else.
yeah, we had systems on the list tonight, and we can just hand this out and everyone can read and do as a takeaway.
That might be for the best.
Yeah, I think people.
I'm a little bit
I haven't
saturated
either.
personally.
That's fine, I just saw it.
Yep, no,
And I
thank
had
you.
asked about it earlier.
I can't absorb too much more information.
Yes, we're gonna come becomes,
Yeah, it's better. Meg, take one and pass
Oh, I
it
can
on.
know about that, but
So the,
Not that I
what's coming
understand
around,
any of this, not any
know
of
what
it.
you're learning.
Everybody, just 2 seconds, folks.
so
2 seconds.
what's coming
Elevator,
around
smiling cat.
are 3 options, kind of the normal things that we hear quite often for mechanical systems, kind of based on what we've learned about your district. These are not the only 3 options available, so we are open to suggestions if there's something you want us to run numbers on. I think the one kind of in the middle, that design option number 2 with some heat pumps, a small boiler, and some ventilation equipment, I think makes a lot of sense. We're doing a lot of these now. Good efficiency, lower cost,
AC for the offices.
and AC, exactly.
AC for the offices,
So I think all 3 of these have that air conditioning component. We've got either the DX air handlers, big air handlers on the roof that are gonna do it, geothermal with heat pumps that are gonna do it, or that, the multi-split. It's kind of like a poor man's variable refrigerant flow kind of a thing, if you're interested.
Oh, right, of course.
So anyways,
Okay,
take a
thanks.
read, and if you find another option that you want us to take a look at, please let us know.
All right, and then depending upon where we land with getting through things for the next meeting, maybe we could.
Sure.
This is actually kind of good to get information ahead of the meeting and then have a chance to
Yeah, it's-
digest it and then,
yeah, no, I've traveled to that twice now thinking we're gonna talk about it, so I'll
because
I'll try to
sometimes
get
just
this out.
emailing and then we can get our questions out of the way a little bit.
So
Okay.
you're recommending condensing boilers or these split heat pumps? I thought they've progressed now that you don't need that backup power or.
I think we should have it.
Yeah, I
Not
think
gonna cover it level where we go.
Oh, my God. Thank you.
Yeah.